Hey everyone, welcome back to the SimRacing Den. I was thrilled to have the opportunity to interview Zach Hodgson, the owner and founder of Turn Racing, a sim racing hardware and accessory company that originated as a passion project in Zach's garage. In our conversation, I asked Zach about how he got into sim racing and grew his hobby into a full fledged business, what inspires him, and his process when designing new products. I also got his thoughts on the current state of the sim racing industry and what's next for Turn Racing. So I hope you enjoy this great conversation with Zach. Zach, welcome to the Sim Racing Den. Thank you for being here, taking time on your Saturday. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are running the business. So Zach and I have talked a few times before, and I've always enjoyed our conversations, getting his perspective on the industry, learning more about turn racing products, his plans for the future. But this time I asked Zach, can I hit the record button, kind of let my viewers into the conversation? And he was kind enough to oblige. So thank you again, Zach. So I want to kind of start at the beginning. What led you, or what's your earliest memory of motorsports or just cars in general? I'm really curious how people kind of got into this passion.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it started pretty early for me. So, as far as like if you're a racing driver, they'll usually say that they were like 3 years old and they were karting and stuff, and wasn't quite that crazy. But I started BMX racing actually. I think it was probably third or fourth grade, and did that. I think maybe middle schoolish. 13, I had stopped, but it was a lot of fun. Working on bikes and stuff. And then my family was like a pretty big classic car family, so a lot of Pontiacs, Firebirds, GTOs, Trans Ams, that type of thing. And so yeah, was always loved cars in that way too. And then just kind of as a gamer too. So doing all the entire Gran Turismo franchise,
Yep.
um, and yeah, and so I guess it that's where it's fun now because it kind of just blends it all together. So.
It's very similar to my story. I just grew up as a car kid. My dad always had different cars all the time. He was a salesperson, so he'd always bring home new cars. And I just grew up with Hot Wheels too, right? And then gaming, right? Playing I might be dating myself, but playing like the original Test Drive and Need for Speed games on the computer with the keyboard.
Hmm.
So then just yeah, and then so sim racing for us car guys is like and people that like computers and gaming, it's just the perfect mix, right?
Hmm.
So that's really cool. That's really cool. So do you watch real life motorsports right now? Like what are you into? Like I personally been watching F1. Actually the Monaco quali was just on, so I just finished watching that. Do
Hmm.
you follow any motorsports right now?
Yeah, I watch. I'm the same. I watch F1 every week, so I watch for sure every race. And like if I miss, I'll even like watch a lot of practice sessions, in like for sure every quali and stuff. So that's definitely what I would say. Like I watch the most. And maybe the actually I think Indy is this weekend, and it's actually
Yep.
like h- probably like 10 hours away from me or something, which is it's like the closest like major race for sure, since it's in the Midwest.
Mhm.
And so I might watch the highlights, but F1 is really what I watch.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, it's been a lot of changes over the years with F1, but I still think it's exciting,
Hmm.
for sure.
Yep.
You can predict a little bit who's going to win the races these days, but there's a lot going on in the middle of the pack, right? So it does
Yep.
keep it exciting.
Yeah. And also, like, there was pretty much the entirety of like the 2010s. Like that was a tough decade actually for F1, just for the racing and whatnot. And so it's actually come around a lot, with the new regulations. It's just made the racing much better, much more kind of unpredictable too. So it's like it's a show, right? Like it's not just like pure, endurance, um, you know, time trials. Like they're trying to put on a show, but in an entertaining way that combines all of what we love. And then also like the storylines too. It's like that's why like Drive to Survive like blew up, because
Hmm.
they're able to put the stories behind it, and they're incredible. So.
Yeah, no, I actually really enjoyed the show, and I think it was cool because I had a lot of friends and family didn't know anything about F1, and then they just started watching the show, and they're like, "Hey, have you seen this Drive to Survive?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know all about it."
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's really cool.
they did a really good job.
Yeah, I think so too. So we kind of figured out, okay, how you got into cars, but what was your first introduction to sim racing? Was it like, did somebody, you knew somebody that was doing it, or just kind of discovered it on your own? What kind of brought you into sim racing?
Yeah. Um, the first game I can remember would be Gran Turismo 2, I think.
Okay. Yeah, great game.
Yeah, it was actually, I think it was like my sister's boyfriend at the time had like a PS2 and or whatever it might have been, must have been PS1 and Gran Turismo 2, whatever it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he had that, and I played it for a while. I was like, okay, this is fun, So
I remember that. Yeah. I didn't even have one at the time. I remember going to a friend's house and being jealous. And then I convinced my parents to get me a PS2
yeah,
so I could play Gran Turismo. Did you
mhm.
have a wheel at that point, or that was kind of just the introduction to racing games?
Yeah, just on the controller.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it must have. Yeah, it'd be PS1, Gran Turismo 2, because then I think the big release was Gran Turismo 3 with the
Yes.
PS2, and I did that one. That was like it was one of those where it's like, Mom, the only thing I want for Christmas is like this bundle, because it was also like the not for sale, it was like exclusive bundle of Gran Turismo 3 with the
Yeah.
PS2, and I was like, it's all I ever wanted, So,
Me too. Yeah,
um,
it's you're taking me back. Yeah, the good old days. Yeah, I still get excited about stuff, but yeah, nothing beats those sort of first experiences.
yeah,
So that kind of takes us in, like, so let's talk about turn racing. Tell us the story of turn racing. How did this start? How did you grow this in, what I know has been a passion and hobby for you, but you've grown this into a fledged business now. So can you give us how that kind of came together?
yeah, for sure. It's been quite a journey, and I'm just getting started for sure. So, um, from growing up into like a lot of gaming, and um, being interested in cars and stuff. And then in high school, was interested in like robotics, and so I was like part of this first robotics team, and so got really good exposure to like just working like just with your hands on fabricating like parts to like build this thing, and which that was really fun. And so I thought I wanted to go to school for like electrical engineering, and then like first year I was a really bad student, and so like just first year I knew there's no way that I would make it through, so I dropped out. And I wanted to, because like really my interest was like just getting right into like starting businesses, to be honest. Because it's something that um I picked up from, I think it was Elon, that had said that it really like I took to heart, was like, when you're young, that's when you should be taking the most risk, because you've got more time to make it back, obviously, but also like you got nothing to lose too. And
Very
so,
true.
I had, when you're 18, 19, you kind of really have nothing to lose, and so I would do various things. Like I wanted to get into real estate, so I was like bird dogging, driving around, and then I wanted to get into trading, and so I was like I spent, I mean, probably 2 3 years almost like just giving it everything I had in order to get that full time, and that ended up not working out, and so there's probably four, maybe five different sort of ventures, I guess, that I kind of went through for a period of like a good, from like 18 to, I guess, yeah, 24 ish. That like was awesome experience, but yeah, like they failed, and that's an okay thing because I learned an insane amount.
Yeah. Don't we
It's
learn the most from our failures? I feel like I
Yeah,
have, for
yeah,
sure.
and so um, and then I had uh started in 2015. I kind of realized that like the um like options trading thing wasn't going to work out, because you really have to start with money. Like a
It's a big
you know
component of it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean like 25,000, like really, like that's like the bare minimum in order to even have an account that you can try to grow into something to be able to do full time. Um, and so, yeah, I had started getting back into sim racing a bit. I got a used G27 and got into iRacing, and I was actually just doing a G27 on a laptop, and I was having fun with it. Because with iRacing too, like you kind of have a progression, and there's kind of like a bit of a path. Like you can't just go straight into like these kind of like the higher licensed races and whatnot. So then I wanted to kind of become more and more competitive too, because I had seen online. It's really because I'm like a YouTube kid. Like I've grown up on YouTube, and so yeah, watching like Barry Rowland,
Hmm.
on Sim Racing Garage, because I've always been like a computer hardware person too, and so looking at hardware is like, yeah, this is because it's like car parts. I mean, it's what it is, right? So
Yeah,
it's just
for
like,
sure.
yeah, it's no different than yeah, like my dad looking at parts for his truck or something, and so wanted to just kind of keep going down that track. I think at the time that was like in iRacing, that was kind of the Gregor Hutu era where like he was the big name. They had this, world championship series where there's like and this like pro license and stuff. And so like I thought that, man, that would be really cool. That'd be really fun to do. And so I kind of went down the path of trying to be like a competitive racer and like, just first year, there's a lot of stuff that you need to really learn. Like you need to learn vehicle dynamics, racecraft, like really fundamental things. And so, yeah, I was just eating that stuff up. I loved it because it kind of combined everything I really enjoyed, which was hardware, competition, racing in general. Because from BMX when I was younger, but then also like in high school, I was did a lot of like, cross country and track, which is just racing, on foot, and so yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I had actually hit like after about a year, kind of 2015 to 2016, I'd hit a plateau driving wise, and like I couldn't pass like 2500 I rating or something. And I was like, okay, well then I need better hardware, right? So I started looking around, and I really couldn't afford, like the high end stuff. So I started to DIY a few things, and then I had seen that there were a few like small time like wheel builders. Sam Maxwell, he was a huge influence on me. He has a really good reputation in the community, and so I just thought it was so cool that like one guy in a shop could be building these custom wheels. Another one was Pololo Instruments. I think he's in Spain, and yeah, awesome. Same thing. It's just incredible that they could design this stuff and then build it. And even with like the tools in 2015, like there wasn't much compared to what we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I had transitioned from getting into sim racing and then getting into the hardware side, and I kind of had quickly realized that I enjoy I enjoy the business and hardware side more than I do the actual racing.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask you, has it I guess that's kinda taken over a lot of your time too, I would imagine, right?
Mm,
As well. Um, yeah, iRacing is I mean, I'm still very early in my iRacing career, but, what I would say what iRacing would probably be your favorite sim right now still?
yeah,
Yeah. It's I for myself too, I find it the most it is challenging, but it's also equally rewarding, right? And the competition is what I like about it for sure.
yep, and
So,
and there can be a little drama, but like that keeps it spicy, and I think just overall, they're doing it the best right now. Even physics, feel, whatever. I think just on on par, they're kind of just doing it the best. So
for sure. So your first product was a wheel? would say that that's what started Turn Racing?
Yeah, I built an R8 wheel because that was my like favorite car to drive, the GT3 car, and that was like all I've ever driven in the sim is GT3 or just GT in general. And yeah, I built an R8 wheel and it was completely out of wood. And
No
so like
way.
I spent like a whole weekend where I took like a blank sheet of sheet metal, traced out the shape of the plate, and then kind of made a little wood jig and bent it kind of the shape that the wheel was. And then I took I think it was just like MDF particle board or something, cut that, sandwiched it on the plate, and then like literally just hand sanded the grips.
Wow. I hope you
Yeah.
still have this wheel somewhere. I'd love to see this wheel one day.
I
You should
had so many that I did eventually
different
that,
prototypes, right?
yeah. And that one I yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
That
I
would be
do have
cool
it.
to see.
I have pictures of it though. I know
Yeah.
that.
That's the first Turn Racing wheel, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was like, I mean, it was like horrific, like looking back, obviously. But there's like I did post like just a picture in like the DIY forum. And like someone was like, I'd buy that. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Mhm.
Kind of the light bulb kind of turned on then. So
Amazing. So Turn Racing now, how many, what is the structure of the company now? So you've grown it to quite an extent. What are the facilities? How many employees are how are things working these days?
yeah, for sure. So I actually I've been very intentional kind of with the path that I wanted to take. I'd gotten some good advice early on from actually like a local entrepreneur because I come from actually a very like manufacturing automation community. And he had told me like, to wait to raise capital until you really have to, bootstrap is kind of as far as you can. And that way you're not giving away your business before you even get it off the ground basically. And so I bootstrapped, just growing organically for starting, I would say like July 2016 was probably like the start date, and it was still like a hobby, like I was working full time in a machine shop, and just like on the floor, hired off the street as a CNC operator. And the reason being was because I I had gone from actually working a night shift at a hotel so that I could spend all night actually just on my laptop working on my trading things, and then I would actually trade all day, and then I would sleep from 3 to 9, and then get
Wow.
up, and then it ended up that was kind of winding down, and so I was going to pivot to like, okay, what's my next thing, and it was going to be building these wheels. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm gonna build these steering wheels, I should learn how to be better at manufacturing. So I went and got a job at local machine shop, and kind of started working my way up there. And and my attitude was always like, when like they've got me for 8 hours, so I give them my best 8 hours. I busted ass, and
Mhm.
like after that, because I was always very like driven. So like I was thinking, the faster I can move up, the more I can learn, the more I can get to start doing like CNC setups, so then I can do my own and whatnot. And so I did that for from 2016 to 2019. Um, and then in 2019 decided to like kind of take it full time. And so I had an apartment and whatnot, and I really like in my shop was at my parents' because they had a like a detached shed or whatever that I could kind of
Right.
operate out of. And I was spending like virtually all my time and even sleeping there, because like between working on the steering wheels and then going to work, like I was never even at the apartment. So I moved into the shop. And I was like, you know what, I can just give it a go. And so yeah, 2019 I took it full time, and it was still very much like one man shop until probably I would say like 2021, where I had had a conversation with like a local investor, and he kind of like, I was actually talking with him about just borrowing, like, getting a loan from him, and he wanted the option to turn it into equity. So then
Awesome.
I ended up just kind of taking him on as a like an angel investor, and it wasn't a large, crazy amount, but like enough to help me like get invest more into like inventory, into product development, starting to actually develop some like core systems and like build a team, and which has been the vast majority of like the last 2 years now.
Wow.
And so like, so caught up to today, I'm still the only full-time employee, but then, for as far as like the whole, I guess, company or team would be concerned, there's probably about 15 people. So either
Wow.
part-time, like, W-2 employee, or like a part-time, like 1099, so, and I think like 7 or 8 of those are actually in like development and engineering. You can see where I put my, money, and where I'm putting my efforts into it. And so, yeah, right now we're very much like a iceberg. There's a lot going on underneath the water right now. So,
Oh, for sure. I know your brain is always working and you've always got ideas cooking. So what would you say? So we kind of understand now where turn racing started. What is the philosophy, or what was your intention with the products? I mean, I'm a user of your products and was a fan of them before we met. They're very well made and also very affordable when you compare it to other options in the sim racing market, which can be very expensive at times, right? To get
mhm.
certain quality. So what's the philosophy between your wheels?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'd actually started out, building, I would say like most of my kind of strategy, you could say I had borrowed from like a lot of Tesla philosophy. So, when you're starting out, you're doing low volume, and so you have to do high price. And so that's where I was doing like high end replica wheel, where you can sell them for, $1,000, $1,200 a piece. And I had there's a handful of sort of factors that, like, when I had realized I needed to pivot, um, and part of it was like I could see like the market getting a bit saturated, but also it just doesn't scale very well. And so, with economies of scale, as you go higher in volume, the price can come down. And so like the sort of like our first step was building the replica high end wheels, and then I wanted to pivot then to the mid market to build, to bring like the high end features to like in a more affordable price, because really I'd also realized that like the high end market just like wasn't even that big. Um, and even to like give an idea, like with the R8 wheel at the time, I think like 2017, 2018, like I was the only person in the world building like a really good R8 wheel. It was and I still maybe only did like 30 that year or something. And so it's not like, if even it were like 300, it would be a much different deal, I think. But yeah, it's like it just wasn't super big. And so I wanted to go a bit more downstream so that we could target a wider audience. And I've always been like a huge just like self-educator, so really trying to absorb as much sort of knowledge and as I can from as many different viewpoints as I can too. And yeah, there's a few like sort of key concepts of how to design things. Like there's a better way to design things. You can actually add value, and uh, you can make the product better and also make it less expensive.
Right.
And so there's like a methodology to do that. and
Yeah.
and so yeah, like I'd really taken that fully to heart, because with sim racing and I mean in motorsport in general, a lot of people just end up copying each other, and there isn't actually very much innovation. And so I really like if you want to break out, you can't just be like a little bit better. You need to be like a lot better.
Hmm.
And so and I'm certainly not even to that point yet. Like we're still like a very small company, but yeah, it's been all self funded and sort of through organic growth versus just throwing a bunch of money at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so yeah, I guess as far as like what we want to represent now is to be like I would say to be the value added brand that really focuses on having the best sim racing experience, not just like adding features.
Right.
So like, does this actually make sim racing better? And does it make it more convenient, more comfortable? Um, you know, and whatnot. And so I'm, I'll be the first to say, like, I'm not the best in the world at it, but that's what I'm aspiring to at least. So,
No, it makes a lot of sense, right? I think with, that kind of leads me into my next question is kind of, the state of the industry, right? I think we've seen huge growth in the sim racing industry. I think the pandemic, a lot more people being at home and spending their money on different things. I think I personally noticed a lot more people getting into sim racing or it being talked about more. Um,
mhm.
that being said, I think you're right. Like, do you think it's becoming oversaturated that just a lot of, copycat, not copycats, let's say, or similar products without adding value? Like you said, like looking at a product and going, does this make sim racing better, more comfortable, more fun, more immersive, right? So
Mhm.
how do you feel like the industry is kind of going right now? What do you kind of think for the future over the next year or two? Do you think it's going to grow?
So it's definitely like matured a lot, and there's been a lot of sort of action from like the market sort of demand side, and then also from like the supply side. And so obviously 2020 was like really like COVID was just a boom for sim racing naturally, and the demand kind of far outreached the supply, and so when other sort of entrepreneurs or companies sort of see that, it ends up looking very attractive and appealing, right? and and so before then it was still sort of more smaller kind of communities almost, it felt like it just I would say that maybe the community as a whole was a bit like, yeah, there was a handful of like small time operators that could make it, you could say.
Hmm.
And now that it's maturing, which is what happens with all technology, like at the as more competition comes in, it gets more and more commoditized. And so, I mean, where we're at now, we're definitely coming off of those like COVID highs, and actually, I would say even in the last 1 to 2 months, probably like new, maybe like 3 year low, maybe 4 year low for like overall demand, I would say. And so, um, yeah, that's something to like definitely. I mean, it's like a kind of like a brace for impact type moment. Like you need to. That's when you have to have. I would say that's when I'm grateful that I chose the path that I did, because I'm not so far overextended that if we hit, say a 4 year low in demand, I'm not screwed because I bootstrapped. I intentionally kept overhead as low as possible for as long as I possibly could, and still do, even now. So I got married. I think it was 2021, and then
Hmm.
so now I have a like a 1,500 square foot shop, like detached shop, and so yeah, I operate everything out of there still.
That's cool.
So yeah, expenses are very very low, and so like I'm able to weather that. But yeah, we'll see who can and who can't. I imagine there's going to be some that can't. So,
Yeah. And
but yeah.
I think sim racers and consumers in general. I know myself, we're more informed these days. We do our research. You know, I learned everything from sim racing from YouTube, and it's part of what inspired me to kind of start my own channel, to sort of take some of my own experiences and bring those to the community. So I think, you know, people are looking for quality now, right? Over quantity, I think still,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, and that's where our market is. It's young professionals,
Yeah.
the vast majority. So, and everyone does the research, even myself included. Before I buy anything, like I'll know everything about the product really before I buy it. Most of the time, you know.
Yeah. What's your advice? That kind of good segue into, what's your advice for somebody that wants to get into sim racing? Um, Maybe enjoys racing games like Gran Turismo with the controller and, wants to make that next step. What would you tell that person or your friend if they came to you? I get this question asked a ton on my channel all the time.
hmm Well, first off, like hardware doesn't make you go faster. I'll be the first to
Yes.
tell you that. Okay, so like, and actually, in some ways, it can almost actually be a hindrance because if you have like a direct drive wheelbase and you have your force feedback, just cranked up, it actually having to fight against that versus like a very low like force like Logitech, it like you can actually be much more precise with that. So a pedal makes a big difference. Like that's for sure, like a guarantee. But yeah, like you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to even get to be competitive. That's like number one. But yeah, and then the other is try to spend the time on learning the fundamentals. Vehicle dynamics, um, like mentioning, but also like how to set up a car. That's a big part of it. You don't have to be an engineer. That was kind of like the the path that I did like sort of take when I had plateaued. And I'm not an expert driver, so like you'll have to, in order to get to the level that above the level that I was at, don't ask advice from me. But um, and I thought that I thought that it was just all in the setup, So like I went into learning Motec and like creating all these different maths and channels and doing all this analysis to create
Wow.
these like perfect setups,
Yeah.
So and that can get you so far. But yeah, I think just like the big concepts, like how do the uh you have to race enough to have a feel for the car, like when you're oversteer, like if your car is oversteering or if it's understeering, like in the setup. And you kind of learn that, like, okay, the really fast drivers, they want a loose car. And so like if you're always very oversteering the corners, like that's what the fastest guys want, because that's they can be that much closer to the limit of adhesion. And so and the professionals, like the difference between like sort of the amateurs and the professionals is like they can just ride that line at the limit of adhesion much better.
Hmm.
And so they don't need a lot of the extra assistance that will slow you down in that way. So yeah, that type of stuff is really important. But also racecraft, don't be a jerk. It's not that big of a community, actually. I mean, like people do remember who you are. It's
Yeah.
like, so like be like eh, do good for the community, right? Like and it is a community. So
I think we've all had those iRacing races where you spend time practicing qualifying and then get taken out on the first corner.
yeah, yeah. and
So
then and then in the heat of the moment raging about it, and then yeah,
yeah,
afterwards feeling bad. And so yeah, keeping it professional, which
keep it fun too, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it's all
Yeah, I
about.
think people forget that sometimes that like sim racing, it's a little bit different than other gaming, right? Because you don't have like a reset button. Like if you're playing Call of Duty and you die, you jump back in the game, right? With you can pretty much ruin someone's entire race and maybe their evening.
hmm
So I always take that into consideration. I'd rather throw myself into a wall or go off track than hit somebody, right? And that's what you're usually told to do in real racing, as far as I know. So yeah, no, that's really good advice, Zach. That I think that would help a lot of new sim racers out there think about some of these things for sure. So I want to ask you about we're going to get into products and I want to talk a little bit about what's next. But what do you think about VR for sim racing? You and I kind of talked about this a little bit before. You know, it's I think now it's starting to become a lot more widespread. I think the PSVR with Gran Turismo, I see it's just a lot of talk and a lot of hype about that right now, and I think it's actually drawing in a lot of people into the hobby because they had a chance to try it out with a controller, and then they go, oh, this would be amazing with a wheel and
Mhm.
pedals. So where do you think VR is going, or where would you like to see it go?
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure the future. I've just personally been waiting, because the technology hasn't been able to catch up, to the point to where it needs to be to become sort of like the defuncto, standard. But yeah, it's for sure, it'll take over. And I've been, I've like I remember I tried like the first, Oculus, and I've gone through a few different VR headsets that I ultimately all ended up actually just returning because, um, for me, like the graphics fidelity, I really like having the graphics be like as high as I can possibly get it, and so, and that's only been possible even to like, play in VR at max settings in like the last year. Like if you have a 4090, you could maybe, go into iRacing and max everything out. But like that's still too expensive for like vast majority of people. Like, and then also I think with the displays too, um, there's just a lot of technology that's coming down the pipe, but in overcoming some of like the technical hurdles, like different things like screen door effect, motion sickness, um, and of course just like pixel density, whatnot, and then there's a lot of new interesting like standards that are coming out that, like with Wi-Fi being able to like have them be wireless, I think will
Okay.
be nice too, because that cable is always kind of like a bit of like an immersion killer a little bit.
Yeah, especially
Um,
for racing, for sure.
mhm. But yeah, stuff like that. I think it's definitely on the horizon though. I mean, in the next 5 years, I would say like it'll take definitely more of a like it'll continue, the percentage of screen, to VR will continue to sort of flip, and then yeah, like end of the decade, I'm sure it'll be pretty much the standard. I think
Yeah, I think I agree. I think people are constantly chasing immersion, and that really puts you in the
it's
seat of the
yeah,
car, right?
yeah,
So,
because that's what it is.
um,
The immersion's like unbeatable. I mean, it's just no triple screen setup. No, yeah, there's
yeah,
nothing that can beat
doesn't
that.
matter if you've got 65-inch
Yeah,
triples, it's not gonna be the same, right?
yeah,
So, yeah, I think I definitely agree with you on that. So, let's talk about turn racing products. So, you've got wheel rims, button plate, couple different accessories that you recently came out with for the wheels that I think are really cool. I've got one of the cover plates on my wheel back there that I slap my own logo on, and you also have a lot of different decals and turn racing. It seems is a lot about customization and personalizing your wheel, which I love because I think that I love the creativity and seeing that in the sim racing industry.
hmm
But what's next? So we've got the TDU 5. Can you tell us a little bit about um, some updates on that and where things are going?
yeah, yeah, for sure. That's been a huge undertaking, and admittedly, actually going into it, I was probably in over my head, because I didn't realize like how much like development work that actually needs to be done to get to the point where I wanted it to be. Because I had done a first sort of TDU version, and it was really just using like a USB-D 480, and then making a custom breakout board, and then putting that into enclosure and shipping it like everybody else. And I didn't want that. Also, like, um, I wanted to start like creating an ecosystem, um, towards eventually being able to build the entire simulator. And so the TDU5 was going to be the first crack at that, and doing it from scratch. So then that way it's our own like IP, our own ecosystem, and then we can also design it how we want. So then I can sort of just assemble it in as few parts as quick, as possible, to put them together as quickly as possible so that it can scale, but also be able to give, better features at a lower price, which is what we're for sure going to be able to do. And yeah, the project actually started, I would say, I mean, it really was like 2020 with the TDU. That was immediately I was thinking like I had actually purposely done a very small batch of the TDUs, and then I immediately discontinued it because my plan, I was like, okay, I'm actually just going to um, go straight into the TDU5, which will be a much more mass producible, mass marketable product. And I, thought that I could do it quickly, and so now it's, yeah, close to mid 2023, and we have a working prototype. So like that's good. Like it's actually very very close to production, and we'll be shipping them in July. But yeah, there's just I've actually it's been a huge learning experience for myself because everything that I've gone through, up to this point has been self-taught. Like I don't have even necessarily like a mentor. I don't have someone that is sort of even like someone that would say I could ask business advice to. Like it's all like YouTube and nowadays Chat GPT and stuff. But yeah, so actually like I'd realized that I need to like actually learn how to do project management. I need to learn how to be organized and create systems. And I think like the first time I ever did like a product requirements document was like for the TDU5 and stuff. And yeah, you learn that there's a lot more documentation the that than you realize, because you need to plan this stuff out.
Yeah,
Hardware in particular it's a good name for it because it's quite hard because it's like you you can't just build something and then go like the full agile approach and then just keep iterating on it. Like in order to get you can to a degree, I would say, like for 3D printing you can prototype and do rapid prototyping,
for sure. Yeah,
and get that to a point where you can start doing like injection molding and stuff. But yeah, so that was a big learning experience. And then also it's been on the embedded side, like e- even when I had started like learning, like I had no clue how electronics worked. It was still like all magic, you know. And I thought I would never even understand it. And so now like I'm not necessarily even an expert in anything, but I have to have a base level knowledge of everything in order to be able to facilitate it all. And so yeah, like learning um the embedded side, like firmware, chip selection, USB protocols, how do we handle that, and all that stuff was also been a big learning experience. And then just like typical like debugging, problems and stuff. And then even like down to like how like we need to have a standard for how we review and order circuit boards and all that. So it's like it's been really like frustrating because I mean I'm happy to actually be pretty transparent about stuff. And so like for this project in particular, like just this one product, I have invested like 100,000 like
wow.
plus, like it's approaching that, if not already past that. And so which is like by far my biggest like investment into a single product.
Wow.
And so yeah, as a small company to be um, putting that much in is for sure a lot. But yeah, it's I think it it's been a lot of really big learning lessons, and also it's sort of the base of a greater architecture, because now even though it's maybe 6 months late than when I wanted to launch it, I've learned like so much, like
Oh
years,
yeah.
it
I
feels
can
like a
just
decade of
imagine
experience
this
almost.
this framework now that you have, right? In designing, building out this product, this process, you can take that now to the next idea, right? And you've
Mhm,
already now got that framework, that project management. That seems like the investment is huge, right? And the benefits from that alone.
mhm,
So yeah, no, I'm really excited about the dash. I mean, sim racing dashes, I think are a really popular accessory. Like for me, it's like kind of become a must have.
mhm.
I didn't think it would be, but it's something I enjoy having. I think it adds a lot of immersion. I think it gives you flexibility with your in game camera to kind of set that up the way you want and still have the external dash.
Yep.
But I see, yeah, there's all different price points right now, and there's people doing DIYs as well, but some people like myself included, I just want to, purchase something that's well made and plug it in. It's going to work, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, no,
Yep.
really excited to see that, and I'm sure a lot of people who are a fan of your products are excited to get their hands on it for sure.
Yep. Because
So
ultimately, the direction we're headed is to have everything be as simple and plug and play as possible, for sure. So, like that's the goals, and then also being able to deliver that at a lower price point with just as good of quality or better.
for sure,
And yeah, that's definitely kind of the way we're headed for all of our future stuff too. And we're building the software too, because that's one thing I wanted to point out too, is like that's what's really cool about kind of the system and architecture that we're building now is um, I've kind of secretly been building this software that will run it all. I've actually, I mean, it's been a year and a half. I've actually been since I started that, and yeah, and so it's like it's fun to start kind of talking about this like even more publicly and stuff. So I've
secrets
hinted
out
at,
now, Zach.
yeah, like I mean, and it's not like a
Yeah,
you know big secret or whatever. But yeah, it's cool because then we can do whatever we want. We can take whatever telemetry we want, whatever dashboards we want to create,
right.
and push that to the screen, and not in a way that's just like the replica, but like in a way that actually makes sim racing better, makes the
That's really cool.
experience
So this
better.
can work outside of SimHub, which is how most of these dash displays operate, right?
Yeah, and so there's going to be kind of a planned rollout. So like launch day with the TDU5 is going to be with SimHub and Z1. Because that's like the standard right now. Like SimHub's for sure
Yeah.
the best for dashboards, but also like even on like the customer side, if you're newer, that can be like overwhelming to figure out, like just getting all your stuff set up, and then even just getting like the game set up, and then you have to also do SimHub, plus you have to download these dashboards, and it's like it can quickly be a very apparent like barrier to entry for people.
Yeah.
And so that's what like the solution then is going to be our turn racing paddock software, which will be as like basically as simple as you can possibly get it, but also have like the expert features if you want it. But base level is like click to install, plug it in, turn on the sim.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think I sometimes us are more experienced sim racers, we kind of forget that even though we're all really familiar with Sim Hub and Z1 and it's kind of become a household name in the sim racing world, like for somebody new like that, they may not even have any clue how to do that and just, want to plug it in and get racing, right? So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I really like the concept of that. So that's really cool. So, what's next for Turn Racing? I know I'm not asking you to divulge future plans or future products, but where do you go from here? Is it new products, software? What what can you share with us?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, it's there's a lot of really exciting stuff that I'm still kind of waiting to like push out. But
Hmm.
the main thing is like we want to we want to be one of the major players, you know, and do it right though. And so and also not offshore all the manufacturing. I want to actually build the factory. And so that's kind of like the vision that I have, to have the factory be built like in my hometown. And, you know, it's not, I'm not saying like it's going to be the, you know, biggest manufacturer in the world or whatever, but
Yeah.
like a proper like
Do it at home. Yeah.
yeah, manufacturing facility, um, and have it be like a industry 4.0 forward looking, you know, digital factory, versus just offshoring it. And that's definitely like strategically the direction that we're headed. Um, and then for the product side, um, we're going to be rolling out kind of one product at a time to eventually have a whole rig. So
Wow.
that's the yeah, that's where we'll end up. You
Very
know,
cool.
because for me, like I didn't I joined the industry as a enthusiast, you know, not as a business case. You know, so like if you're just looking for a business case, I would highly recommend much more lucrative industries. I'll just say that, you know, and that's why it's 6 years later of 80-hour work weeks, and I still pay myself like minimum wage, basically. But so yeah, it's not necessarily even about that stuff. It's about building a community, and I just love being able to make things. It's actually like my kind of creative outlet in a way,
Yeah.
and which is like the most sort of fulfilling thing for me is where I can um, be able to just make stuff. And because like my the way that I like to think and learn things is like I'll go super deep on something for like a couple months, learn everything as I can about it, and then like find something else, you know, and move on. So this job now actually is a perfect job for me because every day I have to be like focused on like learning new stuff, but also being able to create new stuff. So like even last night, I was up until 2:30 a.m. looking at uh, ISA 95 specifications for like industrial namespaces, like how to like categorize like a company,
Oh,
basically.
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Going deep.
yeah,
Oh, that's awesome, Zach. I mean, it sounds like that, it's a lot of work what you're doing, and I have a lot of respect for you in building a business. It's an extremely difficult thing to do, but it sounds like at the same time, it's still a passion project for you, and it's still something you enjoy. So I think that's a wonderful thing for sure.
yeah.
So Zach, I thank you again for your time and chatting with us, with my viewers as well. I know that they're going to enjoy this conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next from Turn Racing. So thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll chat soon.
Yep, it's been a pleasure. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, Zach.